Welcome to the webinar, Building Influencer Skills Through Emotional Intelligence. This webinar is brought to you by Workplace Peace Institute. Today, we're going to talk about how we can actually build up our influencer competency by leveraging emotional intelligence. So, we're going to look a little bit at influencer skills. What are the skills that are actually associated with being an influencer? Understanding emotions, how emotions are different from feelings, and how we can leverage our emotional awareness and emotional regulation to increase our capacity for influencing others. We're going to look a little bit about how we create positive connections, leveraging emotional intelligence, and of course, what emotional intelligence is, why it's important, and how we can strengthen our emotional intelligence. So, to get started, let's talk a little bit about the influencer strength that some people just naturally have. This is for those of you who have taken the Clifton Strengths Finders. Influencer is one of the categories of skills and strengths that people have. Some people just are natural influencers, and others really need to pay attention to strengthening this skill so that they can have the leadership impact that they intend to have. So, influencers have a natural ability to persuade others, to motivate others, and to lead others by effectively communicating ideas and selling their visions. Some of the things that they do differently is they do focus on impact. They're very intentional about the impact that they intend to have, and they're strategic about how they go about actualizing that impact. So, people with strong influencing skills excel at making a significant impact and driving change. So, part of that strategic thinking is to be very clear: what is the impact that I want to have? What are the conditions that are going to have to be in place in order for me to achieve that impact? And then what do I need to do as a leader to ensure those conditions are an actual lived reality so that I can drive the change intentionally that I'm seeking to achieve? Influencers are also very persuasive in their communication. They're adept at using language and communication skills to influence others to support their ideas. Part of persuasive communication is the ability to have high emotional intelligence, but also high social intelligence. So, I want to encourage you to take a look at the webinar that we have on our website about social intelligence and learn a little bit more about the skills and competencies that are associated with that particular leadership intelligence so that you can, in fact, increase your capacity to be persuasive in your communication skills with others. So people with high influencer strength also are just natural leaders. They really are effective at motivating others, which means that they're paying attention to what matters to other people. They're really honoring the inherent worth and value of others. They're honoring people's dignity, particularly as it relates to acceptance of identity, acknowledgement, and recognition, as well as understanding and benefit of the doubt. These are some of the core essential elements of dignity that are really important to our ability to motivate others. So, throughout this webinar, I'm going to invite you to get out a journal if you have a leadership journal, or just maybe some notes that you might want to take, and pause here and spend some time reflecting on what your desired leadership impact is. As a leader, what is the effect that you want to have on others? Now, you might think about this through the lens of the individuals on your team that you lead, or you might think about this from the perspective of the clients that you serve. If you work in nonprofit leadership and you have a big role in fundraising, you may want to think about your desired leadership impact as it relates to donor relations. If you're in sales, this might be the desired leadership impact you want to have with your customers. But if you aren't clear on the impact you want to have as a leader, you're going to struggle to be influential as a leader. So I want to encourage you to just pause here and spend some time reflecting on this. And when you're ready, come back to the webinar and we will resume our learning. So, I want to talk a little bit about emotions and the role that emotions serve. We often use the words emotion and feelings as interchangeable, but they're actually two different aspects of the human experience. So, our emotions are physiological and they can actually be measured through heart rate, through skin temperature, through skin um, fluctuation. Um, Emotions are biological. And our emotions really serve to point us to how effectively our needs are being met or aren't being met. So, when our needs are being met, our basic human needs, our dignity needs, then we experience emotions like joy, contentment, satisfaction, happiness. I would say happiness is actually more of a feeling, but joy is more of an emotion. And when we are experiencing emotions that are pointing us to needs that aren't being met, we may experience fear, anger, um, surprise. So, those are some of the core emotions associated with uh, that point us to what needs are being met, what needs aren't being met. Our feelings are how our emotions manifest. And those are really different for all of us because our lived experiences are different. And we have all had varying um, experiences and access to having our basic human needs and our dignity needs met. And so our feelings are really based off of personality, our memories, our lived experiences, and culture. And so feelings are going to be different for all of us, but our emotions are pretty much the same. So as you think about building capacity to be influential as a leader, you want to be able to discern the difference between people's emotions and people's feelings. I think of emotions as being really categorized in two categories. One is the expression of love, and the emotions that support that, such as joy and contentment or satisfaction, and the emotion of fear and the emotions that kind of support that, such as anger and worry, may be discussed. But our feelings, there we have so many different ranges of our feelings. As leaders who are looking to be influential, you need to be able to look at people's feelings and then dig a little deeper and go, is this feeling showing up because this person is in the experience of love? Or is this feeling showing up because this person is in the experience of fear? And that'll support you in exploring as a leader, how am I supporting this person in getting their needs met, i.e., feeling loved? Or as a leader, where do I have some work to do to support this person in feeling love, right? If they're showing up with fear, what's the source of that fear? What needs aren't being met? If I'm not able as a leader to really get to the core of what needs are being met or not being met, I'm going to struggle to be influential because I'm missing out on what's motivating this person. Emotions also enhance our memory. So when we have a big emotional experience, we're going to have a big memory associated with that. And because our emotions are really perceptions of how needs are being met, when those perceptions are shaping our memories aren't always totally accurate. So, as a leader really looking to build influence skills, and you're working with people who are sharing memories, You need to realize that those memories are being very enhanced by the emotional experiences they were having at the time. Were they in the experience of really feeling safe, i.e., love, or were they an experience of not feeling safe, i.e., fear? And how's that shaping the way that they are remembering an event? And how can I leverage my understanding of that to support positive connection and to support this other person feeling motivated to come along in the direction with me? Emotions organize our behavior and they orient us towards people. So you can tell as how I have talked about emotions as being this compass that's pointing us to how effectively our needs are being met or not being met. You can see how emotions are going to um, organize the way we as humans show up and the way that we structure our relationships with other people. And as you're looking to build influencer skills, you need to have awareness that our emotions are doing this, that they're shaping the way we're showing up, and that they're shaping the way we feel safe or not safe in our relationships. Emotions, of course, also play a role in our moral and ethical development. Um, and something to say here about moral and ethical development. There are elements of morality that are cultural and therefore going to be widely shared amongst the people that we work with. But there's also aspects of our moral and ethical development that are different and that require that we are able to have capacity for being in relationship with people whose morals and ethical expressions differ from ours, with the caveat that our moral and ethical expressions aren't harming others. So, a critical element of honoring dignity is always being in right relationship with people, which is supporting their capacity to be safe and to feel safe. And so, to do that, we need to be sure that we are actually expressing our morality in a way that does in fact honor the dignity of others. And that's a critical part also of how we influence other people and shape the behavior that we're hoping to achieve. So when we think about emotional intelligence, as you're probably aware, is a part of the whole leader. So we have our intellectual quotient, um, the intelligence that we have and that we bring to our cognitive problem solving. We have our personality, just the natural part of who we are. If you have done any exercises or assessments like the Enneagram or conflict styles assessments or Myers-Briggs, you probably have some insight into your personality. And then we have our emotional intelligence or emotional quotient. Emotional intelligence is just one of several leadership intelligences that are very critical to focus on. But I think emotional intelligence does play a big role in how we influence others. So, the three elements that are important to understand about emotional intelligence is that it is a part of our emotional awareness. So, emotional awareness is our ability to identify our own emotions. What emotions are showing up for me? And how do I label those and connect them to the needs that are or are not being met so that I have a better understanding and awareness of those emotions? Be able to differentiate them from our feelings and be clear about the way these emotions are manifesting as feelings. So I am feeling fearful, and that is showing up as anxiety. And to be able to make those connections so that I can look a little deeper and understand, where's this fear coming from? What need isn't being met? And how might I go about getting that need met? It's also a part of identifying the emotion and feelings of other people. So, being able to recognize, as we just talked about on the previous slide, what emotions are showing up with those that we lead, what feelings are showing up in relationship to that, what need isn't being met, and how can I use my power as a leader to support that need in being met so that I can build that competency in influence. Emotional intelligence is also the ability to harness those emotions and feelings and apply them to our cognition and problem solving. So, how do I leverage these emotions and do what we just talked about? Really dig deeper, understand the feelings, and recognize what need is or isn't being met, and then use that understanding to solve the problems that I am facing as a leader so that I can be influential in moving that in the direction that I'm hoping to achieve. Emotional intelligence is also the ability to manage our emotions and our feelings, including the ability to regulate those emotions and the ability to cheer up or calm down another person. So, when we talk about emotional regulation, we are not talking about cutting our emotions off, leaving our emotions at the door, acting as though we have no emotions, because that's actually physiologically impossible. Our emotions are a part of who we are from a biological perspective, and they're going to be a part of our daily experience. But we need to be able to regulate them so that we have the desired impact that we want to have. People who have high emotional expression and show up with a lot of dysregulation with their emotions are going to really struggle to have positive impact on other people. So, part of having influential leadership is the ability to really be in right relationship with your emotions, have capacity to regulate them, as well as to be able to be a supportive presence for others as it relates to their own regulation. Here at Workplace Peace Institute, we talk a lot about the critical importance of mindfulness as a core leadership competency. And that's for this specific reason. If we do not have a daily mindfulness presence, mindfulness practice, we will very likely have a dysregulated presence. And a dysregulated presence will not be a presence that's going to support us in positively influencing others towards the impact we're looking to achieve. So there's 5 components of emotional intelligence. These are self-awareness, which we just talked quite a lot about, self-management, which we'll talk a little bit more about, motivation, empathy, and social skills. So let's take a closer look. There's 2 core domains associated with emotional intelligence. These are the domain of personal competency. So this is associated with self awareness and self management, and the domain of social competence. This is social awareness, being able to accurately read the room, accurately read the emotional experiences that other people are expressing, and to be able to leverage that for rapport building and relationship management. So, we're going to dig deeper into each of these with some journal prompts that I hope you will spend some time with. Either as you go through this webinar or perhaps come back to the webinar. So, in the domain of personal competence, there is the competency of self awareness. So, this is the ongoing attention to your internal state. What am I feeling? What emotions are showing up? How are these emotions being expressed from a feelings perspective? And being self reflective about this. This is associated with um, having observation of our own experiences, kind of thinking about this idea of going to the balcony and watching oneself and seeing how that person is showing up and how they're having impact on other people. Um, and we need to also be investigating and experiencing ourselves, including our emotions. So, self awareness is something that you are in a constant state of. How am I? What emotions are present? What feelings are being expressed as it relates to that? What needs are or are not being met? How do I get those needs met so that I can show up the way that I intend to, so that I have the impact that I want to have, so that I'm able to influence people positively? So, some journal reflections that I want to encourage you to spend some time with as a leader is how does self awareness affect your leadership impact? So, hopefully, you have spent some time really exploring the impact that you want to have, and how is self awareness going to support you in achieving that impact? How is awareness influencing your ability to be persuasive in communication? So, spend some time really thinking about how this ongoing attention to your internal state is going to support you in your capacity to bring people along and to help people come along to your ideas, and to be a part of the impact you're hoping to achieve. And what do you need to be aware of in terms of your style to optimize your ability to motivate others? So if you think about all of the personality assessments that you may have taken, what do those assessments tell you about your personality that you need to have some self awareness about so that you can really have the ability to motivate others and get them to come along with you and follow you on your leadership journey? So I hope you'll spend some time with these reflections. You can either pause right now and spend some time with that, or you can come back to this webinar at any time. The second competency of the domain of personal competence is self management. So, this is handling emotions in a manner that is appropriate to the situation and your role in the situation. The goal of self management is balance, not suppression, and every feeling has its value and its significance. There has been a lot of, there's been a big movement in the last decade toward vulnerability in leadership. And I agree that we need to be vulnerable. Vulnerable is part of the human experience, it's a part of how trust is built. It's part of how we experience the human side of one another in the workplace. And vulnerability needs to be um, within the correct boundaries of your role in the organization. So, as a leader, part of self management, part of handling emotions in a way that's appropriate to the situation and your role in the situation is being able to navigate how much of my emotional expression will support those that I'm leading in feeling safe, and at what point does my emotional expression actually create a lack of safety for people? And being able to be in an ongoing state of navigating that appropriateness. Too much vulnerability can violate safety. It will violate trust, and it will decrease capacity for influence. So there's a sweet spot there around how much you should share with others about your own emotional experiences that's going to help them to feel safe and to trust you, and therefore to allow you to be influential. So some emotions that might trigger some things that could happen that will trigger emotions that we need to be aware of. Know which one of these are really critical to you so that if or when they happen, you feel actually prepared to manage the situation. So, when we humans experience a lack of respect, it can be really triggering. If you're in an environment where that is something that's happening frequently or has the potential to happen, as a leader looking to be influential, you need to have a plan for how you're going to navigate that lack of respect in a way that's appropriate to the situation and your role. Being treated unfairly, being unappreciated, having the perceptions of being treated unfairly or the perception of being treated not appreciated, feeling that you're not being listened to or heard, being held to unrealistic expectations, having your identity challenged. These are all things that can be very emotionally triggering. As a leader, these are things you also need to have an ongoing kind of plan around for how you're going to self manage in situations where you do experience an emotional trigger. When a leader overly expresses their emotions, they're going to struggle to influence people positively. So, part of leadership is this critical element of self management. So, some self management strategies that I want to offer you and encourage you to maybe spend some time with identifying the ones that will be helpful for you is some cognitive approaches. We can talk ourselves out of it. So, what I mean by that is we can change the narrative. We can reframe our understanding of what is happening to support ourselves in our emotional regulation. We can apply self compassion. We can realize we're human and we need to be cared for just like everyone else does, and assume that responsibility for self care on a regular basis. Identify what's happening in your mind and in your body. When we feel triggered, the area of the brain that's responsible for cognition is deactivated. And so when we're intentional about naming what emotion is surfacing for me, what is the feeling that's coming up? What need do I have? That active curiosity is actually going to shift focus away from the emotional part of your brain and activate the cognitive aspect of your brain, and that will support you in emotional regulation. Also, determine if your reaction is appropriate to the situation. Sometimes, when we have an emotional trigger, what we're really responding to is something that's happened in our past that we are anticipating or have fear is going to happen again. And so we're projecting that onto the other people. So, spend some time really reflecting on, are the emotions that are showing up for me disproportionate to this experience? That is going to support your self regulation, both because it's curiosity, so it's activating that cognitive side of your brain. And it's also going to help you really reflect on the way that you're showing up, really leaning into that self awareness. You can use some biological approaches, such as a daily meditation practice. I talk about this all the time with leaders. I highly, highly recommend a 10-minute a day minimum meditation practice. This is something that can be done first thing in the morning. It's best if you meditate at a certain time and in a certain place every day. That time and location element of it will help you to just build the habit of meditation. If you just sort of randomly try to work it into your day, you'll find it's more difficult to do that. But meditation a daily practice of meditation is going to continuously build resiliency in your nervous system, which means you will be less reactive and you will be less likely to get activated during a time where you're having an emotional trigger. Um, Leaders who practice mindfulness are also kind of in a correlated experience, showing up in a way that is supporting other people and feeling safe with them and in their proximity. Leveraging whatever relaxation practices that you have just to support you in a daily practice of focusing on relaxation, which is also a just self-compassion, self-kindness practice. Somatic experiencing is a very specific approach to trauma healing that actually supports the nervous system in truly healing versus regulation, which means you're building much more capacity for resiliency in your nervous system. You can learn more about somatic experiencing on the Workplace Peace Institute website. There's a tab that says Workplace Trauma, and then there's a page about somatic experiencing. This is a one on one session that you have with a somatic experiencing practitioner, and it can be a truly transformative experience in terms of nervous system healing. A healed nervous system is going to be a nervous system that has greater capacity for emotional self-management. And then cranial sacral therapy is also a trauma healing therapy that's done with a practitioner. And there's cranial sacral therapy practitioners in most areas across the United States. So Wherever you are, you could Google that and probably find someone near you. Craniosacral therapy is also a very transformative modality for healing trauma in the nervous system. So, these are some biological approaches that you can take to really support you as a leader in having a nervous system that has capacity for a lot of emotional self management. So, what does an emotionally intelligent person kind of look like? Emotionally intelligent people are able to manage their emotions, remain optimistic, and maintain self control. They find ways to manage negative emotions and impulses, and they are perceived by others as transparent and authentic. So you can reframe this from what emotionally intelligent people look like to people who have high influence skills, are able to manage their emotions, remain optimistic, and maintain self control. People with high influence skills find ways to manage negative emotions and negative impulses. People with high influence skills seek ideas and solutions, and they're not afraid of failure. And people who are able to influence others positively are perceived by others as transparent, authentic. So, some strategies that we can take to support us in achieving these influencing people through emotional intelligence is realizing when we are emotionally, physically, or mentally stressed. When we are at low capacity, we are not going to be effective in influencing other people. When we are at low capacity, we need to take a break, take care of ourselves, practice self compassion, maybe practice some of those biological approaches such as meditation, relaxation, work with a somatic experiencing practitioner, go see your craniosacral therapist. Stay connected to your internal emotional experiences. Kind of think of yourself as standing on a balcony and watching yourself, and be mindful of the emotions that you are seeing surface so that you can manage those before they get too big. Recognize and effectively use nonverbal cues and body language. Develop the capacity to meet challenges with grace and resolve conflicts so that everyone involved feels respected. People with high influencing skills are people who also have high conflict competency. So, if you are a leader that is not yet comfortable navigating difficult conversations, engaging in conflict directly, seeing conflict as opportunities for deepening relationship and increasing problem solving, you will benefit by getting some training in conflict management so that you can really upskill in your conflict competency and come to difficult situations with a lot of courage and also a lot of confidence. That's going to be very helpful in supporting you in your influencing skills. So, self management. Oh, so I want to offer some journal reflections for the self management aspect of that personal competence. Spend some time with these questions, either by pausing right now or coming back to it. How does self management affect your leadership impact? Go back to that leadership impact that you have already identified and really reflect on why it's critically important for you to manage your emotions in a way that's appropriate to the situation. How does self management influence your ability to be persuasive in communication? Why is it important for you to balance but not suppress your emotions so that you can really bring people along to support others in helping you with that impact you're looking to achieve? And as it relates to your personality, what do you need to know about self management in order to optimize your capacity to motivate others? So, spend some time thinking about those. So, I want to take a look also at the personal competence of motivation. Motivating oneself is the marshaling of those emotions and feelings, such as enthusiasm and confidence, to enhance achievement. To the degree to which we're motivated by feelings of enthusiasm and pleasure in what we do, we're able to propel ourselves to accomplishment. So when you think about your leadership impact that you have identified and that you really want to build influence around, how much enthusiasm and pleasure do you actually experience in that? Because that's going to have a direct correlation on your capacity to really feel the desire to achieve that accomplishment. Um, Optimism and hope can be learned. Really focusing on having a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset, this belief that things can be different. Underlying both hope and optimism is an outlook psychologists call self-efficacy, the belief that one has about mastery over the events of their life and how they're able to meet challenges as they come up. So, developing a competency of any kind strengthens that sense of self-efficacy. So the more that you are intentional about your self awareness, your self management, really increasing those skills around self regulation, this is going to support you in um, a greater sense of self efficacy and a greater sense of motivation as it relates to your leadership impact. So let's take a closer look at the social competence domain, looking at social awareness and social relationship. So the first social competence is empathy. Empathy is recognizing the emotions and feelings in others. So being very mindful about what you are observing in other people, recognizing the emotion. Is this coming from a place of love? Is this coming from a place of fear? And how is that manifesting as it relates to their feelings? So, to the degree to which we're motivated by feelings of enthusiasm and pleasure in what we do, we're able to propel ourselves to accomplishment as it relates to our capacity for empathy. Um, we sometimes think about empathy as walking in someone else's shoes, and the reality is we can't do that. We don't know the whole lived experience of another person. But what we can do is walk with them and leverage our understanding of what we're seeing to support them with compassion, meaning stepping in and acting, using our motivation to act with care in relationship to other people. So, empathy can be learned. Empathy is also one of the strengths on the Clifton Strengths Finders. People who have empathy in their top 10 strengths are just naturally empathetic people. It's just who they are. People who have this strength lower than the 10 or closer down to 34, you too can learn to be more empathetic. So you can do this by listening to people as humans. So, not from your role as a leader, but as the human being that's in relationship with them, which means that I'm setting aside the power that comes with my role, the power that might come with my status in the organization, and really just being with that person as a human to really deepen our understanding of their experiences. We can let people fully self express, meaning we don't interrupt them. When those that we lead or those that we're seeking to have influence with come to us with their challenges, with their problems, with the stories that are important to them, we let them fully express those. That can be difficult for some people because some of us are more time oriented than we are relational. And we can think of this like, ugh, this is really like using up a lot of my time. But really leaning into that experience of listening to other people is a way that we can deepen our emotional capacity. Tune into people's nonverbal communication. What is their body telling you about the importance of their words? Is their body in alignment with what their words are saying? So really pay attention to the nonverbal cues and deepen your understanding about, Is this person feeling safe? Is this person having a great deal of anxiety? Is this person passionate and excited about what they're saying? What are their nonverbal cues telling me? And that can help to deepen my sense of empathy. Use people's names. We have all had that experience of someone talking with us and being intentional about using our names periodically throughout the conversation. When it's done at the right balance, it is really powerful. The other person feels so heard, so seen, so available to that relationship. When it's overused, it feels like you're being exploited. But when we use people's names at an appropriate frequency, it does deepen our capacity for empathy. Be fully present when you're with people. I think it's important in our workspaces to have a separate space to sit when people come to have a conversation with us. So there's not a desk that is a barrier between us. In remote environments, turn your email off, turn your notifications off, turn your ringer off, turn your phone over. Be really fully present to the people that you're in communication with. Smile when it's appropriate. Take a personal interest in other people. Ask them about their weekends, ask them about their things that bring them joy, ask them about their passions and their hobbies. Really get to know people will support you in your in developing empathy, and extend supporting energy to people, um, so that when people are in your presence, virtually or in the physical world, that they actually feel physically, emotionally, psychologically supported by your presence. So, these are some ways that we can deepen our capacity for empathy as you try these out. Journaling about these experiences will also help you to deepen your understanding of it and integrate that learning into your system. So there are some different types of empathy. Empathy as a whole requires enough calm and receptivity so that the subtle signals of feeling from another person can be received and mimicked by one's own emotional brain. If you want to go to the webinar about social intelligence, we talk more about how that actually happens, the neuroscience of that. But there's three types of empathy that are worth having some awareness about. One is cognitive empathy. This is knowing how another person feels or perspective taking. It's taking in the other person's experience. It's highly effective at motivating people to apply their best effort. While this form of empathy can be pro social, cognitive empathy can also be implemented by individuals who are purely self motivated to use it for selfish gain. So, as you think about applying cognitive empathy to support you in your own capacity for influence, be sure that you have a lot of intentionality about the integrity of that intention so that you're applying cognitive empathy to influence people in positive ways that are pro social. Emotional empathy is feeling the emotion along with another individual. This is due to what's the activation of our mirror neurons, which I talk more in detail about in the social intelligence webinar. While emotional empathy does promote bonding and attachment and can be positively affect trust and loyalty, it can become overwhelming to the person extending empathy, causing burnout and then ultimately detachment as a coping mechanism. So, as a leader seeking to really build influence, be in healthy balance with your emotional empathy. I think this is something that is especially critical for people who work in the nonprofit sector. And then there's empathetic empathy. This involves the capability of understanding a person's predicament and walking along with them with the willingness to help if necessary. So, empathetic empathy is what we were talking about just a few minutes ago. It's I'm having an understanding of the experience that you're having because I'm paying a lot of attention and I'm perspective taking. And I am applying compassion, which means I'm willing to step in and help if help is what is necessary. I think empathetic empathy is a very critical skill in your efforts to build influence. Um, Empathy, so some journal reflections that I wanna encourage you to spend some time with is, what is the role of empathy as it relates to your leadership impact? What is the role of empathy as it relates to your ability to be persuasive in communication with other people? And then thinking about your own style, your own personality, how do you optimize your ability to be empathetic towards others? If you are a highly empathetic person, you might need to also consider, as it relates to leadership impact and ability to be persuasive, are there times where you need to regulate or pull back on your empathy in order to achieve the influence that you're seeking to achieve? So spend some time with those journal reflections. And then lastly, I believe is our last social competence is social skills. So social skills are the social competencies that make for effectiveness in dealing with others. Social abilities allow one to shape an encounter, to mobilize and inspire others, and to thrive in professional and personal relationships, to persuade and influence, and to put others at ease. So, our social skills are a big part of our ability to be an influential leader. Some ways that we can be intentional about developing social skills is to be mindful to not confuse observations with evaluations. So, what I mean by that is, as humans, we have a tendency to see something and then create a shortcut in our brain by evaluating it. So, an example that I use all the time is someone who is late very often to work. An observation would be, hey, colleague, I noticed that you were late 7 times in the last 2 weeks of work. That's an observation. And an evaluation is, I really feel disrespected by your tardiness. So one is I'm observing, and that observation is going to support me in deepening my understanding of what's going on. And an evaluation is, I'm putting an idea out into the world about who you are that's going to put the other person into a defensive posture. And that is not going to be helpful as it relates to social skills, as it relates to being able to influence other people. Practice deep and focused listening. So, really paying attention to how people are showing up, both in their words and their physical presence, and listening to understand versus listening to respond. Identify the emotions and the feelings of others. We've talked a lot about that. Explore the needs at the root of those feelings. We've talked a lot about that. And make requests to address those needs, or assist the other person in addressing the needs. So I noticed that you are showing up with a lot of anger, and honestly, that kind of looks like a lot of anxiety. And I'm wondering if perhaps your need for, and then fill in the blank, your need for belonging on this team isn't being met. What can I do to support you in experiencing that belonging? So we're looking at those emotions and feelings and using them as a compass to identify what needs aren't being met, and then exploring in partnership with that other person how we can get that need met. It's going to be very effective in your ability to influence others. Of course, active listening and maintain awareness of the actual effect you're having on other people, and get feedback if that impact is not matching the impact that you're seeking to achieve. So, just bringing this all together, in the personal competence of emotional intelligence, we have self awareness. This looks like emotional self awareness, accurate self assessment, and then self confidence. Self management. This shows up through emotional self control, having an achievement oriented approach, um, taking initiative and being optimistic, being a transparent leader to the degree that it's appropriate with your role, and being agile, being able to adapt to the needs of yourself and others. In the social competence, we have being social awareness, being service oriented. How can I be of service to the people I am leading in relationship to the impact that I'm seeking to achieve? How can I be aware of what the space around me needs? So, as a leader, that organizational awareness, how am I orienting my social awareness to ensure that I'm meeting the needs um, that I've been tasked with as a leader? And how can I do this by leveraging empathy? And then lastly is social management, the ability to influence others, develop others, help them grow in alignment with their own goals, build teams that are highly collaborative, able to problem solve and navigate difficult things together, which then, of course, requires that we have high conflict competency, and that we leverage all of this so that we're inspiring others to come along with us with that leadership impact. Because as a leader, if those who are if those on your team, i.e., your followers, are not actually following you, you won't be able to achieve the leadership impact that you're hoping to achieve. So I'll close with this quote that I think is really resonates to what we've talked about here today. Leadership is mainly engaged in human relations. Then leadership at its core is largely about emotions. And when we really integrate this understanding that it's our relationships and the way that we are navigating our emotions in service of those relationships, we will find that we are, in fact, really effective in influencing others.